Lose a quarterback, gain a quarterback, all in a day. Nebraska has its guy from the portal. For real this time.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet ready. Feel present, feel competent, feel ready.
All right, welcome. It is another day in the portal as we're here with you, Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman, as we are reacting to another quarterback commitment. There, unfortunately, 2 commitments and just 1 quarterback, I think, to show for out of this. But on Tuesday, late Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday evening, well, I guess on Tuesday as a whole, Nebraska hosted UNLV quarterback Anthony Colandrea on a visit, and he committed at the end of that visit. So they quickly replaced the gone but never forgotten Kenny Minchey, and
we
we're
will
on.
Remember you, Kenny.
What a world! What a 24 hours here.
Yeah, Anthony Colandrea flew in on a jet plane to Lincoln on Tuesday midday-ish, and by dinner time, he was not just committed, but I can tell you he is signed with Nebraska. So there will be no flipping at this juncture. Nebraska has a quarterback in the fold for 2026. So let's go through our portal headlines as we do every day during the transfer portal stretch. Biggest headline, undoubtedly, is that Nebraska has found a quarterback, former UNLV starter, former 17-game starter at Virginia in the SEC, 1 year of eligibility. ACC, Virginia plays in the ACC. Anthony Colandrea. In addition to that, Nebraska added 3 pledges on Tuesday from offensive tackle Tree Babalade of South Carolina, linebacker Will Hawthorne, formerly of Iowa State, and safety Dwayne McDougal of San Diego State. So we will discuss those players later in this show, but for the majority of the time that you listen to us today, it's going to be about Anthony Colandrea and what that means for Nebraska moving ahead.
The Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year this past season at UNLV is Nebraska's new quarterback. He threw for just a little under 3,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, ran for another 650 on the ground. You watch him; he's kind of a spark plug. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Probably around. I guess I don't have his measurables in front of me. Probably about 6 foot would be my guess.
6 foot 205 is what he's listed at. Was listed at by the Rebels in 2025. Yes,
he's a little spark plug. He's a little energy giver. It seems like, and frankly, that's the kind of guy that I wanted them to get anyway. It might seem like sour grapes or whatever, but this is the guy I prefer to see how it plays out for. Now, this is a year compared to 2 years, so keep that in mind. It's going to be a year of Anthony Colandrea here. You would have had 2 of Minchey, right?
We're not scaring off Trey Taylor with this, that's for sure.
Right. So that's true, but I'm and that helps too. But I think this is just the kind of guy when you watch him. I mean, there wasn't much watching Minchey because he didn't play much. He played in garbage time and didn't have any starts in his career under his belt. So, there's a lot of film to go off of, and there's a lot of stuff to go through. There have been turnover issues in his 3 years in college, 9, 11, and 9 interceptions in his first 3 years. So, I mean, we're talking about basically 30 interceptions in 3 years here. But I think it's something that you can probably live with if he's given you that dynamic ability. He's a playmaker, man. And I think more than anything for Nebraska, he's an energy guy. So he's going to bring that sort of confidence and swagger to the table right away. I don't know what it's going to end up. You got to see what the pieces are around him, but I do like the player and I like the idea. That's for sure.
Yeah, those interception numbers at Virginia, 20 interceptions in 2 seasons, his sophomore year, after which he transferred. He threw 13 touchdowns and 11 picks. So things started to spin in the wrong direction a bit for Colandrea against Notre Dame in November of that sophomore year. Just 8 of 21 for 69 yards, no touchdowns and 3 picks. That was his toughest day as a quarterback. Also lost in a bad way against North Carolina that year, but really rebounded well going to the G5 level last season, working with Dan Mullen, the UNLV coach, formerly of Florida and Mississippi State, and the TD to INT ratio improved considerably, 23-9, and this is really where he picked up the ability to run. He had the ability to run before, but what Mullen asked him to do was significant in comparison to his time in the ACC. So 127 carries last season for 649 yards, 5.1 a pop, and 10 touchdowns. The Rebels won 10 games last season with Colandrea as the starting quarterback. And in the first 2 losses, UNLV scored 31 points against Boise State and then 35 points against New Mexico. So a dynamic offense, a productive quarterback. At the end of the season in the Mountain West Championship, Boise beat UNLV for the second time, 38-21 this time, but Colandrea still had a nice game, 225 yards passing and a touchdown, ran for 66 and a score, and then it dropped off a bit. Not a great bowl game against Ohio, 17-10 lost in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. So it's a good sample.
Bad weather, if I remember right, during bowl
is that
season.
right? The Frisco Bowl in North Texas, bad weather. Let's blame it on the weather because you're not going to get that in the Big Ten, right?
Right. He also, I think this is sort of notable for him. He had to beat out Alex Orji this year. It was a kind of an open quarterback competition with both those guys coming in from, him from Virginia and Orji from Michigan, who was the starter last season. Obviously didn't go that well for him, but I was watching some Dan Mullen press conference stuff from before the season and sort of talking about the strengths of both of those guys. And it was sort of a competition, but they liked his ability to, be dynamic and make plays. So he won that job. And I think they're glad they picked him. And I think he's the kind of guy where teammates will sort of gravitate to him. And like I said, he'll bring that sort of swagger and energy too. So it's a fascinating little setup. It's not this organic, like, what it would have been with Minchey, where everybody kind of comes in together and we'll all bloom at the same time. I think this is a setup where you're kind of looking at him, Colandrea, and saying, all right, man, like, we're probably going to ask you to carry us a little bit. And so it's a fascinating dynamic going into next year.
I don't know. That may well be the case. I think Nebraska will probably go into the next phase of this offseason when it's looking at all of the pieces on its roster and try to figure out a way, or the best way to do that is to add pieces here over the next 10 days that don't demand that Anthony Colandrea carries the Nebraska offense. And to be clear, we're talking about him much more in the fashion like he is the expected starter in 2026 for Nebraska than we would have been talking about Kenny Minchey at this time. Minchey, with no starting experience, would have been walking into a situation where he competed with TJ Lateef. I don't see it that way nearly as much, if at all, with Colandrea when spring gets started. I look at him as a Casey Thompson type, as a Jeff Sims type, who was an older quarterback that's coming to Nebraska to be the starter.
No, yeah, but certainly more certain than Minchey was. That's for sure. But yeah, it's an intriguing pickup there, and all the ones that you mentioned, at the start there are pretty intriguing. But obviously the news with the quarterback is significant, and We mentioned TJ Lateef on yesterday's podcast. We were talking about the up and down of Minchey and in and out, and I wonder kind of what he's thinking. He had to know they were going to go out and find another guy, and it really happened fast. They settled on Colandrea here. There are all the other names that we sort of went through, whether it be Probula or Lagway or there's one more that I'm missing. Aiden Childs. Yeah. I think this, and I think I said this yesterday, I think this is your best. Colandrea is the best option out of all of them. Just because his playmaking ability, there's some stuff that you're curious about, just like how does it translate? Mountain West is a really good quarterback league, and it's an offensive powered league, that type of thing. Quarterbacks have gone there and had success, but we saw the UNL quarterback, before Colandrea was, or I guess before, there might have been 1 year gap, but anyway, two quarterbacks before that, it's Jade Mayava, who, went on to USC and has had success there. So different players, different things, but quarterbacks have gone on from the league and jumped up and had success.
Let's take a break and come back, talk a little bit more about the quarterback situation at Nebraska now with this new commitment of Anthony Colandrea out of the portal on Tuesday, and then we'll get into some of the other ads that Nebraska made also on this Tuesday in the world of the transfer portal. That is next.
But first, a word for the FanDuel Sportsbook. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. That would be Thursday and Friday of this week, because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users should get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. You get the profit boosts on bets that you already feel good about, one that you're already going to do anyway, and then you could just add to your odds right there in the app. Very convenient. You just flip the switch, flip the button, and it is there for you. So if you're feeling the favorites on Thursday and Friday, you could go that, add the profit boost to it. Or if you're feeling like you want to double up on going, taking a risk, you could do that as well. Then you can apply the profit boost and go after bigger winnings. When you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on all the action all playoffs long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day.
All right, we're back. Second segment of this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you, reacting to the big news from Tuesday night that Nebraska has added a quarterback 24 hours after the Huskers lost a quarterback in the transfer portal. The transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away. This one will not be taken away. Colandrea was in Lincoln on Tuesday and has signed a contract to be a quarterback at Nebraska in 2026. So he was paired in 2023 as a true freshman with Desmond Kitchings, the offensive coordinator of the Virginia Cavaliers under Tony Elliott. And then we know in 2025, well, that was the same in 24. And then in 2025 with Dan Mullen. He will be now joining the Dana Holgorsen, Glenn Thomas band of quarterbacks. What kind of a mix, knowing the player from what you've seen in limited time with Colandrea? What kind of a player, what kind of a fit, what kind of a mix do you expect this to be? How natural is this to pair a player like Colandrea with a coach who calls offense in the way that Nebraska wants Dana Holgorsen to do it?
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense if you're going off of Dana Holgorsen's history. It is a little confusing, admittedly, if you look at what Dana Holgorsen has been since he's been at Nebraska. I think those two things have been decidedly different. So, I don't know what that. We won't know exactly what that looks like until the season starts. But my hope is that Dana Holgorsen is given, full autonomy, and there's nobody, there's no special interests that he has to protect, or, whatever it might be, or there's no, nobody checking at the line of scrimmage too often or anything like that. So I think it's a great mix. It is a great marriage if it looks like it's supposed to look.
Some of the quarterbacks that Dana Holgorsen has coached in his time as a head coach, when you look at Will Grier at West Virginia, when you look at Clayton Tune, who went from Houston to the NFL, De'Aaron King, Donovan Smith in 2023, Dana's last year with Houston, are, I think, from a measurements standpoint and a skill set standpoint, much more closely aligned with what Nebraska's getting in Anthony Colandrea than what Dana had to work with in Dylan Raiola. Now, I'm not casting judgment after the fact and explaining what worked or didn't work between Raiola and Holgorsen because of anything in Dana's past. Like, he's fully equipped to work with a quarterback who had the skill set of Dylan Raiola. But I do think that this quarterback, being more of a mobile player, somebody who's a little bit more on the undersized nature of the position, fits in line with where Dana has had success in the past. And now he's run the air raid in the past, which is not what he's been running at Nebraska. And I don't think that's what he will run at Nebraska in the Big Ten in 2026. But it's just something to chew on as you think about like this quick marriage that they're going to have to get to know each other in a hurry. And I imagine that probably started on Tuesday when Colandrea flew into Lincoln.
Yeah. And I think there's reason to believe that Dana Holgorsen, is a bit of a chameleon in that regard, and he can sort of work with what he gets. And also, Colandrea has that piece to his game too, where he can do a lot of different things for you. He is like I said, this, the kind of spark plug that you want. And the thing that I like about him, just watching him on tape, and I guess you hope that this translates. You think that this translates. Is a guy who seems like he plays with a lot of confidence, and he he seems to be quite decisive in his decision making, which can be the reason for, without diving into the tape too much, it can be the reason for the picks. It can be the reason for the turnovers. But
yeah, he'll take some risk. He'll take some gambles. That people that I've talked to about Colandrea, who've watched more film of his than I have, say that when he drops back, there were times where you held your breath and waited to see if it was going to be a highlight reel play or one of the more ugly interceptions that you've seen. And that comes down like that. You reduce those kind of plays, those bad plays, and even some of those risks with good coaching. And I think that was a result. What you saw in 2025 was a result of Colandrea spending a year working with Dan Mullen and his staff. His production was notably improved. Now, not against the same kind of competition that he faced in the ACC in 2024. I mentioned he played Notre Dame, obviously played ACC teams in that 2024 season when his numbers were down. And then you move into the Mountain West, and look, it's Idaho State, Sam Houston. They played UCLA and beat UCLA, but that was when
UCLA
really
good in that game.
Was terrible. UCLA was terrible. Yeah, 15 of 21, 203 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, ran for 60 yards. So he was very good against UCLA. Nebraska has another quarterback on its roster who was also very good against UCLA in a win this season. So They did not play the Rebels did not play San Diego State in 2025, which would have been interesting if you could look at that matchup and see what did Anthony Colandrea do against Rob Orich's defense. But I'm sure Rob Orich is familiar with him because he's watched lots of tape of various games. Now he's probably watching the offenses of teams that he was set to play, and they didn't play UNLV. I don't know. I don't know, but Orich would be somewhat familiar with the UNLV game and probably crossed paths at some time with Colandrea.
Yeah. And like, going back to before, like I'm really, really okay with a risk taker at quarterback with a guy who's just going to confidently make those decisions and live with the results afterwards. I'm just not in the current mood of talking about minimizing risk. I think you've had a quarterback in an offense for the last 3 years that has been scared, and they have been trying to minimize risk too much. And by minimizing risk, they have actually ended up looking worse than I thought that they could over the last 2 years. So I say, screw all that, throw that to the wind, and let your quarterback go ball. And I think that's what this guy does.
Yeah, go all in, Matt Rule, in year 4. Turn the hat back around and throw caution to the wind, and do it with Anthony Colandrea as your guy. But that's several months away. There's a whole offseason to play out, and some kind of a contrived quarterback controversy that will exist in the spring and through the OTAs and into August. And there'll probably be another quarterback in the mix for Nebraska who enters the picture here in the next couple of weeks. So can't wait to talk about that. I'm guessing it won't come with the same kind of drama that it did for Nebraska's expected QB1. But now this piece is in the books, and Nebraska can move on and maybe find a defensive lineman or two. Let's take a break and come back and discuss what else Nebraska did add on a very busy Tuesday for Nebraska football in the transfer portal. That is next. All right, but first, let's talk about something that most men just don't want to bring up, but absolutely should. You've got stress from money, from work, and from life, and that stress just doesn't switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the body and the brain so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in one mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. What you do is you connect with a board-certified doctor online, and then everything ships discreetly to your door. It's easy to understand why more than 150,000 men have already made the switch. Most men are ready in 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now is the time. Head to Rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your first order.
All right, let's do a quick recap again. Mitch, you might have to help me out here. So we got Colandrea, the UNLV quarterback. He'll be Nebraska's quarterback to start the day. Nebraska got a commitment from Tree Babalade, the South Carolina offensive lineman. Then Iowa State linebacker Will Hawthorne joined the club, and then either right before or right after Colandrea committed, it was Dwayne
McDougal.
Yeah. We get some names going on in here, which is good. He is from San Diego State. So is that it? That's 4 today.
As of right now, that's 4. It's 6 for the week, 6 total from the portal. Nebraska has had 19 enter the portal. Nobody new has entered the portal as of this moment on Tuesday night since Willis McGahee IV went in on Monday. At least that's according to my calculations. I haven't seen anything else come across the social wires. So previous to Tuesday, Nebraska added and retained and kept offensive guard Brendan Black from Iowa State, and then the linebacker from San Diego State, Owen Chambliss. So we've got 2 who are into Nebraska from San Diego State, the former school of new Nebraska defensive coordinator Rob Orich. Let's start there and just discuss what Dwayne McDougal might be able to add for Nebraska. He's a veteran presence in the secondary, was a starter and top player for the Aztecs this year. Nebraska has had an exodus of some sort from the secondary so far this year in the portal. You've started to see some of that crazy depth begin to get whittled away. So Caden Vermas went into the portal as a defensive back. Roger Gradney, who had shifted between linebacker and defensive back, went into the portal. Malcolm Hartzog, who was hurt for the majority of this season, played safety and corner, went into the portal. After the bowl game, Braylon Prude to the portal. Ramir Stewart to the portal. Bryce Turner to the portal. Larry Tarver gone to the portal. So that's quite a large number of defensive backs, and McDougal comes in and fills one of those spots. So he'll be at Nebraska, and you'll have Justin Rhett, who's coming back as a senior safety. You have Caleb Benning as a sophomore at the safety position. Mario Buford is a junior or a sophomore. I believe he redshirted this year. Played safety and corner. Rex Guthrie will be a junior at Nebraska at the safety position, and then you can start to get into some of the corners on the team. But definitely an opportunity there for a guy like Dwayne McDougal to come in and play rover or safety and be a starter on day one for Rob Orich.
It looks like it. 1 year guy. He's played he's been with Orich for the last 3 years, right? Was he at Idaho? He was at Idaho too. Yeah, he was at Idaho in 23 and 24. So Orich was at San Diego State in 24. So there was a year of gap there, but he followed him after that. And then now is coming to Nebraska with him. Seems like,
what's his size?
He is, according to the San Diego State website, 5'11", 208.
Okay. All right. Well, you're replacing Deshaun Singleton, and Nebraska's going to need some help at that safety spot. I would expect to go into the season with Guthrie and Benning and McDougal probably at those three safety spots, depending on what else happens here in the portal time.
Yeah, I think they'll probably have an opportunity to sort of reset. It'll be a bit of a new scheme as well for what they do. So think about it that way. And I think McDougal is a guy that could come along and obviously be a really good translator for a guy who's been playing in it for a couple of years, having the familiarity with Orich. And then, to go back to the beginning of the day with Mr. Tree, feels like
great name for an offensive lineman.
Yeah, incredible name for an offensive lineman. It feels like at this moment, that feels like your right tackle next year.
Right.
Your tackles are, both going to be SEC transfers with Tree and Elijah Pritchett from a year ago, and he'll be back, and you feel increasingly better about that one with Evans back, and then with the Iowa State guy Black in at the other. You're just looking for
he's a right guard.
Yeah, you're going to have a left guard, and that's what you're looking at this point.
Well, it could be Gunnar Gatula. Or it could be Tyler Kanak. Nebraska has two players there who have experience. Tyler Kanak, of course, started at right tackle in the bowl game against Utah, but that was no. He started at right guard because Rocco was injured. So it was Turner Corcoran at right tackle. So Kanak, as a senior in the program next season, could absolutely flip into that left guard spot, or as I said, Gunnar Gatula, who's been more a tackle in the program, could be your guy. But Tree Babalade, Babalade.
I would guess Babalade, but
we're gonna call him Tree.
Yeah. Tree's good.
Let's go with Tree, like we did with Prince Will for quite a long time before we learned how to say Uman Mielin. God, I just screwed it up.
That was good. I think you got it.
Iamaliaba. Okay, I can still do it. I can
see. Yeah, you're on fire.
I can still do it. Better than the Fox crew that had the Nebraska UCLA game, right?
Whoa. Yes. Yeah. Much.
15 starts heading into 2025, and then he was a starter again in 2025. Babalade, Mr. 6'5", 330 pounds, out of DeMatha Catholic, so big high school in Maryland. So whatever, he comes courtesy of Lonnie Teasley, Nebraska's new offensive line assistant, a coworker with Jeep Wade from Georgia Tech, and I would expect that Nebraska is going to get a commitment or two from Georgia Tech as well on the offensive line. So they're not done. They're not done on the offensive line, even though we just went through what could be the starting lineup in 2026. And then Will Hawthorne, who is the last to leave Ames, Iowa. Please turn off the lights.
I don't know anything about Will. I got to be quite honest with you. Other than the measurables and sort of the how much eligibility and stuff like that. But I do think they needed, kind of sneaky. They needed some linebacker help, and Chambliss was a huge ad, I think, yesterday. And then you get another body in there that they feel like can accomplish what they're looking for as well. But you're right, the mass exodus at Iowa State is wild, and Hawthorne is another piece of that.
He was highly coveted by Nebraska as a prospect a year ago in the class of 2025. The number 2 prospect in the state of Iowa, according to 24/7. In that class of 2025, behind Thomas Meyer, a tight end who signed with the Hawkeyes, and Hawthorne visited Nebraska in June of 2024. Signed, of course, with Iowa State. Had offers also from Kansas State, the usual suspects that you would expect for a solid 6'2", 215-pound kid out of Gilbert, Iowa. So for the Cyclones, in this first year, let's see, he had a standout year after he signed with the Cyclones over the Huskers, according to On3. He what is this? Are these his high school statistics? I don't know. I don't know what that means by standout year. I'm looking for Will Hawthorne stats. I don't know. We'll get them to you on the show on Thursday.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
All right. What else? Wrapping up the day. Big day for Nebraska. Deep sigh of relief. Yeah. If you're Nebraska, if you're walking around the.
People will be asking where are the defensive linemen, and I don't have an answer for you. So that's what we're looking for next.
If you're walking around the war room, you think they have a war room? They definitely do. They have a war room, like it's like a 2-week-long NFL draft that's going on in somewhere deep inside the Nebraska football complex, and they, I'm sure, have coffee and donuts and papers strewn across the table and laptops open and projection screens up and computers with metrics going and many phones, and there's probably like a cot and a pillow in the corner somewhere or in some other part of that office. So there'll be some story about a coach who went home like 2 times from the office during this 2-week period. In that space, they are much more jovial tonight with Anthony Colandrea in the fold, signed, sealed, and delivered than was the mood one day ago, 24 hours ago, when the Huskers had just gotten word that Kenny Minchey was defecting to Kentucky.
Hey, free advice. This always works for me, especially while we have great weather right now. Get it while it lasts. Open the windows. Open the windows. It'll make it feel nice and fresh in there. If you're feeling a little bogged down, if the smell of just a whole bunch of people being in the same room for 4 days in a row or 6 days in a row
could be happening there.
Open the windows, open the doors, get some new fresh air in there. You'll feel like a new person, and then it will create the positive energy that is necessary for Nebraska to continue their pursuit of getting new players on their roster.
Yeah. I think Will Hawthorne redshirted at Iowa State. Iowa State in 2025. There are no stats to be had. So I don't know what this standout year's talking about. He had a standout year in the weight room, in the classroom, all of that. Matt Campbell did great stuff with him. I don't know. He didn't want to go to Penn State with the rest of the Cyclones, and that's Nebraska's to Nebraska's benefit.
Yep. All right. That's it for us.
Get out of here.
Yep. Appreciate you guys. That is just another day in the transfer portal. Make sure you stay tuned for tomorrow and follow us and subscribe, like, and subscribe to get updated on the latest when the latest pods are dropping, because you never know when they're dropping. They're going to drop at all sorts of random times over the next couple of weeks. For those of you on video, we're sending you over the first ever national 24/7 Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel, and on audio, make your second listen Locked On College Football. We'll talk to you soon.